Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 5th, and let's just take a look at the chart we've got right here. We were expecting a slight turnaround off of the deep pull. This is an interesting setup too, because you end up with what's called the potential of a delta V reversal, where you get the large pull off, moderate day, pop up. Now, for me, a stronger move would have been the direct crossover of red. It's not quite happened at this particular point. So this becomes pivotal in more than one way. I know that's funny, because if we turn down before crossing the red, then we can expect a new leg lower. And the interesting part about that is most people will be talking about moving down here into the 1860 range. Probably not going to get there. Usually finishes somewhere halfway in between the 1890s and 1800, right in that range. So that would be the potential on a failure for that to complete. It would become very clear for us if we get a pivot lower here of the steel before progressing above the 7.5. So these become key spots now to look for, both green moving above, the steel moving above the 7.5, and or cyan dipping back below zero, giving a little bit more edge to the positive side of things. We can see that while we've had improvement in the extreme, we would have expected a nicer move well up there. This could literally turn around very easily at this particular point. It hasn't been sufficient enough. So you can see the start of a cyan candle. It's not by any means done. We'll have to check on that later. So we really can't rely on that. What we can go to, though, is the 50K chart, which always helpful. And it started out right here. We started to move a little bit higher, broke past it. So that was okay. And then it became weak again as it rolled over when it wasn't able to take out the previous -7. So then the key became right here when it popped up above, and that was on this lower move just before the pre-market opened up, and so that was an indication that we could see some positivity. Now, when this broke away, that was not an encouraging as far as being able to maintain, though you had the red break into a new zone, and that usually provides you enough momentum to get going. But it wasn't until all the way over here that momentum not only broke the previous red peak right there, but you had the next buy signal, which came at the market right there as it crossed over, and that was at the 22 level, and which is pretty consistent to where it had been all along, and boom, shot up from there. So decent, but again, you still have some bearish implications, though. With this pivot up here, I would expect once that positive extreme net retrace, which already has been, it can still ride a little bit higher with this. It hasn't completely faded, and we're not seeing higher peaks yet from cyan or anything like that that would override the power of that red. Now, if this red fades before the 0 point, which it's starting to look like it might do, then we're going to capture some more weakness. But I would expect potentially a day that's going to be choppy, that goes back above the 0 line, but I don't think it's going to be a runner by any stretch. We can look at a 5K chart of the other day while we're at this. Is very clear signals. I mentioned as we were coming down through here that it was time to cover that overall short because I could see the potential for some nice turnaround as we got into the deep oversold. And sure enough, we broke past this point, was able to take that, and what a nice run. Now, you don't know that you're going to get that steep a run. We have seen some pretty nice 10, 15 point moves recently to the upside as well as on the downside with these moves. So it was worth taking them, and it's just a simple, SPY option. There were several other add-in points that came along the way, and you can see a beautiful rise of the red. And then when you had that move below with the cyan under the red and white, it was a clear indication you were going to get a nice blowout move, and it did exactly that. Turned into weakness as you started right here. The steel dip below was the first indication, and then when green confirmed it with the cyan above the 0 right there, boom. Deep red at this particular point. It's in a little bit of a momentum run. I would expect that we might need to come back down and fill that in a little bit later. It's not showing it just yet. In fact, cyan's moving below the red. But you have that, and you have dip below the red line. So all those factors weigh into it. It just allows us to whip through some of the other charts quicker because that's pretty detailed analysis of where we're at. You can still, NASDAQ's not ready to confirm the turnaround. Dow had been the weakest component, so looking at it, also not there. So no shock with any of this stuff. It's all pretty straightforward into what we've been expecting. USO, a little pop off its bottom. And what are the targets for that? Let's see if we can get that to give us the numbers. 37 is the number. 3640s right now. Could take a little bit getting that crossed over there. Do have the bullish part of the steel moving across the cyan. You can begin to see these effects, particularly when you have a significant drop in the cyan, and that at a particular point would have been even clearer if the cyan had dipped below zero. I mean, if it does so and you have a continuation for the up peak, and you're also breaking into a new high range. So this is why it's important to see these lines and recognize when you get these powerful cross points, they become helpful. Now, it's not sustainable yet unless you have the follow through with the green moving above, and then you're going to need to see red turn around, but that's going to take a little while. The fact that red has dipped below this previous low right here is the number that I begin to watch for the earliest turnaround, and then above the -13. And I did post some of the details for like seeing the alternative colors. I mean, of course, here we're looking at DOC paint, but on the buy sell A for those with the indicators. Went through and put that on the website under the Learning Center. And you're more than welcome to work with that, even if you don't have that, because I'd often post those charts that show them. TLT, no, not there. Not there. Gold, ooh, yeah, that actually looks pretty decent for gold right there on that close. Was excellent. I took advantage of that one, the 123.99, because you get the double whammy of the green continuing to move. And then also you have the steel moving above the cyan dipping below zero. These are all signs of accumulation taking place within that little dip. And I guess I can drop that below there. I know we had 125, but I'll drop it to 124. Start to narrow that range. It gets a little easier to see the relationship between those ranges. And the glorious euro had the buy signal coming to its key point, and still drifting a little higher in there. No crossover here. You do have the advantage of the +13, but as soon as that dips below, you would expect that to take out the bottom of the deep red. And again, you're going to have to break above the 13 since you don't have any real pivots here to go off of. Your last one would have been right over here. What is that number? It's probably going to be somewhere in the... So I can get that to show up here. There's my info window. -10. So it's a -17. It's got a ways to go. Love playing the euro there. X still holding up fine, but you can see it's starting to roll over at this peak particular point. We'll be watching cyan for moves above zero, as well as steel moving back up above. There's a little bearish move here with the steel dipping below, but we would expect that to turn around, and that's going to come from an oversold, gives it plenty of room to climb. So by no means done with that move. CLF, likewise, same situation. Not quite as strong as you would see from the X with the cyan all the way back up to zero, but needless to say, it's been a decent run. Has some positive retraces to retreat, take care of. It's done that. JCP, we had a nice big move, and it was interesting because it started to roll over. Well, it was back over here with this one made a lower peak than the previous one. I was looking at that pretty closely as Friday happened, and then we opened up higher, yet with a crossover. And so it was nice because it was, well, a little bit over that open area, 971, and you're starting to see the dip and the rise in the cyan, and that's a clear indication. Give it a little bit of room, and then you know you can capture a fun little move. WLT. Nice rising red within this general ugliness, but be watching that for the next lower peak on sell signals for an advantage to take that lower. In fact, it went kind of bearish. Well, it was right when it crossed over here, but then once you got the steel moving below cyan, I liked it short at the 585 range. It could still hold up from there because you do have a little bit of the higher peak, but that's okay. Sometimes you need to go ahead and take a position. Let me go through the readings here before we get in that. You can see nice turnaround. A lot of the stuff that was all sell has gotten a little bit greener, and that's exactly what you expect. And that's why it's kind of helpful to see that color ratio where you go from super extreme red to you start to catch a little color, and then that color starts to change broader, and that That shows you a real turnaround. It's when they don't change that you know that you've got a problem. And that's still a lot of red from the Dow, though it was completely red the other day. A little less red now. Oh, here it is, the Dow. It was the NASDAQ. So some new buys popped in there. Convenient. And here we go with alert charts. Apple, nice cross with the steel. Not quite enough to turn around yet. Still worth the opportunity to sell your puts at the 95 range, I think. Sell some time, wait for the signal to take place. Amazon, it was a nice turnaround, but no, not anything special from those readings. It's not likely to progress in anything yet. Could. I mean, maybe that's the earliest part of the turn. Doesn't look like it yet. We'll see. Baidu, right in a little battle right there. The greens got a little bit of an edge, supported nicely with those middle ABM numbers. And FAS, a little recovery bounce back from that. That's still not pretty any way, shape, or form. Facebook, a little bit decent with that nice rise from the steel there. But along with that, you have rising cyan, which indicates that shorts are still attacking into that rise. It'll be an interesting one if we can get a little bit of a green pivot along with cyan moving lower on that. That could be a decent buy if it turns around. But for now, still opportunity to short the pops. Likewise for Google. So we had this one day oversold reprieve. This is kind of what we expected. Will it last into another day? This doesn't look like it's got tons of legs to it. The dailies were moving okay. And some of these are closing, but lower peaks there. That's actually a little bit more decent for Netflix than not, particularly with green staying over. And actually, that should be a higher green pivot than there. It was at minus 11.41, now minus 10.50. So that's one to look at as a potential for a long play. I think PCLN had some nice intraday signals as well. It's very attractive. Yeah. Nice turnaround move considering there was some decent short activity applying into that, but that higher red, you see, it gave it the additional momentum and then broke back up above there and boom, take off. And so this is part of the new addition I'm adding into my logarithm for the magenta signals in that, which will take into account whether or not we have a rising pivot on red or lower as a clear indication, opposed to just having a pivot. Its relationship significant. And Tesla had started up with the nice green and then steel rising the other day before the pop. Then it started and has continued. And you also have rising red as well. So you see kind of setup with that. And Twitter. No objection to Twitter. It's just we're in this long decay of the steel fading fast. Still holding up well, I think. You retrace. You still have positive extremes though, which means you have no new buyers coming into, even though it's dropping, it's still considered oversold within this. I mean, overbought, because you're still producing positive extremes, though you're not seeing an increase in short activity or the buyers that exist running away as much as just new buyers not popping into the fractal equation. So there you have it with that. All in all, the market still has more weakness in it than strength. So like I said before, when we were looking for Pop Monday, that again, I'll be selling any of the longs as soon as I get a turn in the 5K chart and or 50K and going to the opposite direction on those, because it still does not look very strong at this particular point. As always, though, look for me on private Twitter feed, Stock Twits. Trade well.